So you know what they say, Mr. Keith, better late than never.
That's right. Some days are
Yeah.
a
Well,
challenge.
I walked into a buzzsaw this morning. Our internet is down, and we've been wanting to make a change. I think that's going to come quicker than everybody anticipated. So anyway, we were kind of struggling to get up and running this morning, but we are here and we're live. I am Paul with Hyperbaric Plus, and we're at 122nd in May. And Keith's always good about spinning me around. So we're at 122nd in May, and Keith Bishop with Prevail Over Cancer comes every week and answers our questions, and I'm just going to keep spinning this around. We have a little podcast studio in the back that one of these days we may graduate to. But anyway, here we are, and today we're going to be talking about mycotoxins. And as my internet's not working, they're going to try to get this loaded on our Facebook page, and you already have it at
Yes.
Prevail Over Cancer.
Yes, Prevail Over Cancer, and on the blog, I have a blog about mycotoxins, and I have it a free download on that page.
Right, there you go. So you have immediate access to it that way, and my people will have it. We'll have it on our website here in the very near future. So we haven't even passed it out here yet because I can't get on technology, man. I can't even get to it to print it. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. And do you have something to go off of to start?
Memory.
Okay, good.
We'll start with
Well,
that. And so
they're trying to run that through the printer, so we hope to have it here pretty quick. Go ahead, Keith. Take it away.
So this is kind of like part two about mycotoxins. So we talked about it some last week, and my emphasis is about cancer. That's my specialty, although I've helped people for many years, with other health issues. But now my specialty is cancer, so I kind of focused on that. But actually in the past week, I've been learning more and writing more. I have more information on my blog and the handout. And so actually, mycotoxins are related to maybe even some other cancers that we don't know that much about, meaning they just haven't discovered it some. For example, there's some mycotoxins that definitely do increase. Sometimes that there can be some developing research that they're just learning about. But mycotoxins come from mold, and mold is going to be in all types of items. Matter of fact, another person today was talking about his ice maker. They found mold in his ice maker, and he tore it apart, or he did the cleaning process, checked it, and there was still mold. And so he went in and took it apart, to clean it. And actually, he'd probably have to do that every couple of months, to help keep that from becoming a problem. And that's one reason why even in communities they add chlorine or other versions of chlorine to drinking water to keep mold from growing in water. But that may not be enough, or like in my case, I live in the country and I have well water, which does not have chlorine, and it has more of a tendency to create that mold. And so another example of that could even be like that dark ring that's in the toilet. That's mold. The shower, the bathtub, any place that we see discolorations, it doesn't have to be black, but any kind of a color is going to be some mold exposure. And then foods. As a matter of fact, actually foods, I was actually distressed even when I read about that starting in the 70s, they actually started giving a mold toxin to cattle to help fatten them up. Because this mold had an estrogenic property to it, and it would bind to the estrogen receptors and actually become a toxin, and it would make them fat, gain weight, and make the meat more tender. So I don't know if they're still doing that, but I have to admit, I do live in the country, and I do see some things at some local farms. I'll just leave it at that. I have to be careful what I say, but they are heavily spraying dairy and meat sources, with pesticides and chemicals and who knows what. So, and then even in that process, they take the grains and put those in the silos, actually above ground and above ground silos. They're not necessarily building the tall ones anymore, but they're making more horizontal. And then they spray chemicals on that for that silage to mold and ferment to feed the cattle, and that's what we get our milk from. So, I'm not a big fan of dairy.
As an aside, those same things, if ingested in the body, do cause fatty liver, cause
Yes.
insulin resistance, cause the same thing that's happening in the
Exactly.
cows.
Yes.
that-
So
that
the
are-
cows don't live that long, and so we don't follow up with their blood values. As humans, we live longer, and we start seeing things like that. And so Josh with Ultra Botanica is here too, and so he's just mentioning that. But we see other things show up, other health issues. Matter of fact, even thyroid problems. I'll kind of start from here, but there can even be some brain issues, and these toxins can, affect the brain. It actually, and I was rather shocked finding out that some of these toxins can actually create low thyroid problems, Hashimoto's, autoimmune diseases. But Hashimoto's are autoimmune, but whether any type of an imbalance in thyroid now, I'm starting to think, well, we need to check and see if there may be a mycotoxin and a mold source creating that issue. And I'll mention that as we go through these health issues I've come across with people for years. I've seen people with Hashimoto's and nothing else, be going on. Or another issue is liver. Josh mentioned liver toxicities. I've seen liver toxicities. Liver enzymes go up with actually just taking like one medication. And one person will have a problem, the next person doesn't. Why is that? Well, there could be underlying issues going on, and mycotoxins, is worth looking at. So it's probably more common than what we realize. We think of the United States as being, perhaps a safer a safer food source because of the pasteurization and the regulations and maybe better storage issues, but actually that probably isn't the case. And it's actually more going on than what we think about. Even our homes, any type of a humidity that's above 50% is going to encourage mold growth. And this time of year in Oklahoma, we're running 80 to 90% humidity, and if the air conditioner is not running almost 100%, we're not going to be at 50% humidity. The winter time with the heat running is the only time that we may drop below 50%. So that is just another, if we have a mold source, that is one way that we can help remediate that. We have to get rid of some of those things that can feed that, including the higher humidity. So dehumidifiers are an issue, are actually a great item to use if there's concerns about mold. And so one of those ways to test for mold is going to be a Petri dish test. We talked about that. My blog has information and pictures and a protocol for that. But these dishes are not expensive. You can get a dozen of them for like $30, that are geared for that. And matter of fact, it may take that many because we want to test every room in the house. That means if you have a bathroom, if you have a room that you're living in, I wouldn't necessarily say we have to test a closet unless we suspect a problem in the closet. Some large walk-in closets could be an issue if the air conditioning and heating system is not doing good, if you put damp clothes in there. So yes, those could be an issue. But typically I'm recommending my clients get at least a dozen of these plates. Once again, it's about $30. And test that. You set the plate out for an hour, in the room, and then put the lid on it, write the location that was. Is it 30? Yeah, $30, for 12 of them, plus tax. So, so set it out for an hour, write the name of the location, and then you set that out for at least 4 or 5 days, and to let it grow. And if you see anything on that dish, then you have to figure out what it is. It may be mold, it may be bacteria. We have to figure that out. Even if we want to put one outside for an hour, test that to see if that's a source for the mold. Because outside even, just outside, just so we have a baseline, what it's like outside. And so that's actually even a protocol that professionals will use. When they filter the house and they put a filter, they put a disc in this machine, and they suck the air through that in a set amount of time, and they send that disc, that filter, off to a lab to look at it. They do one inside and they do one outside. And so therefore we should be doing the Petri dish inside and outside so we can see what it is. This time of year, mold is a problem in Oklahoma. We've been blessed with a lot of rain. I mean a lot. Normally, this time of year, grass is burnt, or dying, and it is thriving right now. And so mold is a problem outside. Is that some of that's going to come inside too? So we do both. And then if there's a concern, you can send these Petri dishes off to a lab, or you can hire a professional to come in and do more testing to figure some of that out.
I would say test your air vent, test your
Air
air
vents.
vents, or even your intake, your
Yes.
return, just so you'll see if it's circulating
Yes.
in the house beyond the room, because you may be hitting the other rooms.
Yeah,
with
so,
your air
and
conditioning
so
system.
Josh is talking about doing that test, about testing the air ducts. And so you take that plate and you can tape it or set it up so that the air is blowing directly on it, for a short time, 10, 15 minutes, and then you set it aside for 4 days. Label it, set it aside. So yes, the air ducts. Matter of fact, the house that we purchased 6 years ago, I did a quick swab inside that duct. It had mold. And so then we hired a professional to come in. Yes, there was mold. And so we had it remediated. We did pull the carpet out. It was old anyway. So we did have that remediated and taken care of and cleaned. So actually they cleaned the whole house.
And it's important not just to kill the mold, but the secondary part that's really exacerbating is they need to purge the mycotoxins from the house, because they will remain even
Yes.
though the mold source is dead.
Right, yeah. So they cleaned the house. They wiped it down, and with hazmat, clothes on. So this is how serious these things can be, because the mold creates those mycotoxins. Matter of fact, most antibiotics are actually mold mycotoxins. Penicillin is a mold mycotoxin. Amoxicillin. Matter of fact, almost all antibiotics, are natural products that are derived from mycotoxins. And so those mycotoxins, inhibit the growth of bacteria. That's good. Millions of people's lives have been saved, definitely. But they're toxic, in the body.
They actually create they're territorial, and they create a biome that prevents other things in the body from attacking. So
Yes.
some of the study we're looking at right now, specifically around that in cancer, is they'll create it's why penicillin works so well, is that it crowds out the other things. In that case, it was a beneficial
Right.
discovery, but the fungi is a territorial
Yes,
creature.
definitely. And so even some medications are literally a mycotoxin. Besides antibiotics, another one's called cyclosporin, which it shuts down the immune system response, and they use it for autoimmune disease. Well, that drug also increases the risk of several cancers. And so, because there's still some other anti-inflammatory type issues going on in the body. So we need to know if there's a problem or not. One of those ways is actually to test the house. As a matter of fact, any of my clients that have a liver enzyme that's elevated, matter of fact, an interesting story, I have to share this. So this is before I knew. And so actually this was probably almost 30 years ago. I had a client came in and he had a liver enzyme that's elevated, and it's called GTT. And that enzyme was elevated, and we typically think of that as being an issue with a person that is drinking too much alcohol. And so he was actually extremely upset with his doctor, because his doctor, made that accusation. Well, you're drinking too much alcohol. Well, he doesn't drink alcohol. And I have to admit, I didn't know either, except for that there was some damage, and we were able to help decrease some of that with doing some natural things. But going back and thinking now with his health challenges that he had and that enzyme being elevated, he probably had a mycotoxin issue going on. So, so therefore so liver enzyme. So any liver enzymes elevated with a minor, issue. For example, I know of another person. He could take an allergy pill, and he could literally take, an allergy pill that almost nobody else has a problem with, and liver enzyme goes up. Okay, so that's going to be a person we need to evaluate. for mycotoxins. Mycotoxins tests are available as the most accurate is actually a urine test. And at-home collection, send it off to the lab, and then you get the results back in a couple of weeks. That is the easiest way to know if there's a mycotoxin. But then how do you know? So that's about a $250 test. So how do you know if there may be a concern? We're going to look at liver enzymes. If liver enzymes are elevated, we want to look at that or consider that. Thyroid, just weird things happening on the thyroid, whether it be Hashimoto's or a T3 that is low. In the past, we've seen also T3 is the active thyroid, where the reverse T3, which is a mirror image, if it's elevated, we've always thought that was a stress-related issue. Well, it may not be. Actually, it may be a mycotoxin issue. And there can also be subclinical thyroid issues, which it can include everything from weird lab values on the thyroids to just weight gain issues. So, matter of fact, I have clients that the only way that they can lose weight is by detoxing. They can exercise, they can fast, they can do everything, but they cannot lose any excess body fat unless they detox. And that means it helps the liver to work better. And so, so these mycotoxins are definitely fat soluble. They do stay in the body a long period of time. And so when you do this urine test, if you'll take actually some glutathione, liposomal glutathione 5 to 7 days before the test, that will actually help your body start the detox process. And detox is urination, and it will go out into the urine, and it will test more positive that way. So we need to know if there's an issue. And so everything from the brain, as a matter of fact, every single cell in our body has fat. The outside cellular wall is 2 layers. It's a phospholipid bilayer, 2 layers of fat on every single cell in our body. And these mycotoxins can attach to those and get into the cells.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's, and there goes the disease progression.
Yes,
Yeah.
fat soluble. So it's going to spread. It's going to keep spreading. So on that. So we can test for it, let's say with the urine test, the Petri dish, and other health issues. And so I don't have my handout, so I'm trying to remember that. So let's see, other health issues can be autoimmune diseases, cancers. Oh, and Josh has got his computer going. So immune dysregulation. Oh, hormones. I want to concentrate on that. So hormones. So some of these actually are estrogenic mycotoxins. That means that they attach to estrogen receptors, and so what happens with that, and remember, I've seen a lot of people, especially women and a few men, where their estrogen levels are like really high, and it doesn't make sense. Why is that? Well, what happens is these mycotoxins can attach to the cell and keep stronger the estrogens that we typically measure, like estradiol, and they're not attaching to the cells, and so they're higher. Well, the mycotoxins also, can affect breast tissue, endometrial tissue, ovarian tissue, and vaginal tissue. And so, matter of fact, any of those cancers are going to be another one, and prostate has estrogenic type properties, the thyroid estrogenic properties, the esophagus and the gut estrogenic receptors. So estrogen type issues, including these molds, actually increase the risk of all of these cancers I talked about.
That's interesting because I hadn't thought about it. We talked, I can't remember, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the difference between grass-fed beef and grain-fed beef. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of hitting me. If they're spraying it with these things, they've got mycotoxins and it's being adjusted because grain-fed beef typically causes estrogen buildup in the body, whereas organic grass-fed beef doesn't.
Correct, yes.
So it's kind of going together.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many things. So Ulta Botanica is working on some things about mycotoxins and molds and things like that. So they're great at research and developing protocols and supplements to help with these type of issues. And so, so hormone things and weight gain are significant issues. Paul's got.
I don't want to drift off here, but I do want to ask this question sometime, and I don't know where it fits in. Okay. So the mycotoxins are creating a gas, a byproduct. The waste of that mold is what is actually creating the cancers. There's some component there.
Well, and so, yes, so the mycotoxins, so how do mycotoxins increase risk of cancer or other health issues? Actually, it is a chemical. And so it actually is a chemical that comes from the mold. And
That's what I was getting into.
It is a chemical.
And the reason I'm asking this, and then I'll let you go and I'll quit bothering you, but we all hear about dogs that can smell cancer in people. Well, it's the same, maybe it's the same dogs that are finding the mold in houses.
Right. Yeah, so locally we have a person, she does that.
So I'm kind of curious if that's a tie as well, because what is that dog smelling in the
Correct.
cancer?
I don't know. That's right. And so, but they actually, they know, you know, matter of fact, you can look online and type in that mycotoxin, and they show you the chemical structure. They know exactly what it looks like, you know. And matter of fact, you know, then scientists will even take that chemical structure, they'll alter it to make a drug. And so, old movie, was it Medicine Man, Sean Connery?
Yeah.
In it? You know, and so they go out into the country, you know, into the Amazon, trying to find sources for problems, or you know, for medications like molds, and they're digging things up in the dirt, and often it's molds, you know, maybe bacteria or other chemicals from other animals. On that, yes, question.
I ask, so going back to the Petri dishes, I've done everything in my house that you just recommended.
Okay.
24 Petri dishes.
Okay, 24.
And did an outside. The outside one looks like a forest of mold.
Yeah.
The inside has almost every single room has a little bit of mold. Where do I go from here? Are we saying the little bit of mold is even still a problem, or do I need to identify the mold and then assess if it's a problem?
Okay, yes. My recommendation, so you found, I'm going to repeat, the reason I repeat because I can't hear your question. So yes, so he did, he had once again, we have a lot of mold problems because of the temperature right now and humidity in Oklahoma, a lot of mold outside. And that's part of the hay fever, allergy type issues. Inside, it wasn't as bad, but you definitely had some. So now you have to figure that out. And meaning, you have to either send your Petri dish to a lab that can specialize that and identify it, you know, or hire a company to come in to do that test.
Okay.
And to figure that out.
So address them no matter what. If I have mold, I need to identify it.
You need to identify the mold. That's correct. Identify.
You can be, you're continually being exposed. So, you know, whatever the mold is and what the mycotoxins it generates, you're continually being exposed to that. Even if you're doing things proactively with your health, it's helping you get better. If you haven't taken care of the source of the issue, you're
Just
gonna
gonna
have
reset.
problems.
Yeah, just keep having problems, and then some people are more sensitive than others in the same family. You know, even children. You know, even a identical twin still could respond differently.
And it goes back to the same thing that we talked about, our biomes. You know,
Yes.
you know, we're engineered to overcome those things. They
Yes.
occur in nature naturally. When we're in homeostasis, and when we're out of balance, that's when you really get.
I won't ask too many questions, but because my mycotoxin panel, I just got it back an hour ago, and mine has elevated since my baseline 2 years ago. I'm interested, should we test my wife at the same time and see if she has gotten these as well? Because she might be more resistant to it, right? Or should she show the same numbers?
Well, it depends on, so what you need to do is actually, we got our handout. To a certain extent, and some people better than others deal with this exposure that we have. It's kind of like going out to eat. You know, some people are going to get the E. coli infection from eating at the salad bar, and others aren't. Okay, we're all exposed to these things, but some of us develop problems, and some of us are. Well, definitely, we have it. The issue is that if she's not having any of these major symptoms or blood tests, and I got those listed on here too. You know, if no symptoms, that makes it more difficult for me to say that she needs to be tested.
Okay.
You know, but it depends. So once again, you have to kind of look at any kind of a health symptom, you know, on that.
And I think part of the flip side of that too is because it does attach to lipids, and it can store in the fat that you can. It's not necessarily an acute exposure to it that causes problems. It's a buildup over time, and so you may or may not be symptomatic initially, and down the road you can build up enough of the issue that now you've got symptoms, and so I would think that in the same household, it would be.
Beneficial?
It's not going to hurt anything, right?
Correct.
It's kind of going, what Keith has always said is test, don't guess, and you may as well know. Because you can be proactive before you have symptoms and maybe take care of a problem that might crop up.
Yes, and or, like you mentioned, you had a baseline a few years ago, a couple of years ago, and it's worse now. So, and your health issues are worse now than what they were a few years ago too. So actually a baseline could be a great option too.
And you recommend urine over blood testing for the mycotoxins?
I'm not an expert on the blood tests. The urine tests are definitely easy to get with, even without a doctor's order.
Okay.
Vibrant?
I'm not familiar with them. I'm familiar with Mosaic Labs.
Okay.
There are 2 to 3 companies that do that, and it may be even the same technology. A test on that. So let's see. I'm going to glance at this to see if I left anything out. I've got all the several aflatoxins listed with the particular cancer concerns, but liver cancer, kidney cancer, thyroid issues, testicular, neurotoxicities, esophageal liver cancers, bone marrow suppression, estrogenic type issues. I've had a few people now coming back the past few weeks with some of these toxins, and they have hormone-related cancers, breast cancer, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, liver cancer, and then other health issues. And I'm just rattling through these. Get the download if you want to get this. But brain fog, memory loss, mood swings, dizziness, headaches, attention deficit, hyperactivity. So matter of fact, I have some issues with that too. So reduce lymphocytes. Okay, and so what's important, I like to have a reason to test. And so, as a matter of fact, most of my clients with cancer have low lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are the precursors to T cells and natural killer cells that attack cancer. And so the mycotoxins can knock that down. It can decrease the activity of these cancer-fighting white blood cells. So that's very important. So a reduced lymphocyte is another marker besides the liver enzymes that I will be looking for, to recommend doing testing on that. And so actually, frequent infections, histamine intolerance, mast cell activation. I know of one family actually with some cancer issues, cancer history, and another person in the family with mast cell activation. That means major allergy problems to everything. And so, okay, I'm going to be recommending that they do a test for that. I mentioned weight earlier, fatigue, low thyroid. Hormone cycles can be irregular because of the mycotoxins. Some of these can attach to the hormone receptors. Now the organs aren't going to work right. The thyroid issues, leptin. Leptin is a chemical. When we eat, leptin goes up and it tells us that it's time to stop eating. Mycotoxins disrupt that function. And so people that have a tendency to not know when to quit eating, that might be an issue for them. So there's even supplements that are geared specifically for that, trying to get the leptin regulation to work better for weight loss, and actually indirect, that same leptin issue actually contributes to osteoarthritis, where what we think of as a wear and tear disease may not just be that, but leptin itself, is an issue for osteoarthritis.
You'd mentioned neurological and cognitive, and there's some research out there indicating that the majority of Parkinson's patients are high in ochratoxin.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting.
Wow. Okay. So Parkinson's.
You know what comes into that same that I haven't got to. I tell you what, Shy, you have opened a can of worms. I got a lot of things I want to say before we get offline today that's happened in my office. But we use I can't call it red light helmet. It's photobiomodulation by Neuradiant. And they just came out with a new protocol for mold using red light therapy, cranial red light therapy, and they're addressing mold, which they already addressed Parkinson's. So I'm just wondering how all that's going to tie in together, because the more we dig into this, the more dots we're connecting.
So I have another thought on this, on the Parkinson's issue. there's also what they call pseudo-Parkinson's. It presents as Parkinson's, but whenever some people, when they discontinue their wheat, a source of mycotoxins, and some other chemicals too, and another study showing that whenever they discontinue dairy, their Parkinson's disappears. So now that's one diet approach I always recommend anyway, for that. But well, those are definitely sources of mycotoxins.
And is that dairy universally, or is there a difference between
It was actually more like
industrial dairy farms versus
it was more general.
grass-fed?
It was more general, not grass-fed, not ideal situations. I have to admit, I don't trust milk hardly at all anyway, so dairy at all. And so because I've seen what they do, to the fields and the food that they feed the cows. And so getting a healthy milk, I think is a challenge. And so, because I've actually seen that and moved away from that, because I could see that from my front door. So moved away from that type of a situation. So yes, that's kind of interesting. So there could be a lot of health issues, more than what I'm mentioning here. Skin rashes, itching, rosacea, wheezing, I'm kind of an allergy type issue, but wheezing and sinus congestion, chronic cough, asthma-like symptoms, without allergy, triggers, and more like just a continuous type thing. So there's many different health issues, that are related to that. But another blood test I can think of also, besides the liver enzymes, AST, ALT, I didn't mention those. Is it GGT or GTT? I think it's GTT, if I remember correctly, and a CRP, a C-reactive protein, if elevated, means there's inflammation. Matter of fact, I've had a lot of clients with cancer and a lot of clients other ones, and we see the CRP is elevated, and that's an inflammation. Oh, and ESR, eosinophil rate, or erythrosedimentation rate, rather, ESR, and those are inflammation markers. And people, well, I don't have any problems. I don't ache. I don't have arthritis. I don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but they have inflammation going on. But why? So that would be another trigger. It's like, okay, well, let's test for mold and see if mold's here. The mold is an inexpensive screening. It's not screening your body. That's going to be the mycotoxin test. But the mold would be the check in your house. So for nutrition type things to do, very simple type items, it can be a low mold diet, and being careful about grains. Matter of fact, I don't have cereal in the house, so cereal is bad for us anyway. We have to be careful about peanuts and coffee and dried fruits. And so dried apricots coming from Turkey, how long have those been dried, and sitting on the shelf? And so we have to be very careful about that.
With coffee.
What now?
I said you're meddling with
I know,
coffee.
and I
Is
drink
there
coffee too. And so yes, so now
is there
there's,
a mold-free coffee?
well, there are some coffees, yes, that they test when they make it, that it's low in mold, okay? But once it's ground, it actually has a larger surface area, and with high humidity, now it can grow in your home. So I have to be a little more careful about that. And so I choose to grind my own beans right before I use them. And then I do the mold test, actually. I take those grounds and I set them aside at room temperature for a week. If they grow mold, I'm not getting that brand anymore. But if it doesn't grow mold, then I keep using that.
Before or after you use them?
I'll do it after.
So you are brewing,
Yeah, brewing. Yeah.
and then you're putting the grounds to the side to see if they grow mold.
Yes,
Okay. I
correct.
just wanted to nail that down.
Yes.
You
And so
found one that doesn't grow it?
I use Cameron's. So Cameron's organic beans, seem to be pretty good. It's a Scandinavian blend. It's not a dark roast, but it's kind of a lighter roast type of a thing.
You get the best polyphenol output if you use a medium roast.
Yeah.
The darker you roast it, the more you're bleeding out the polyphenols.
You're damaging those polyphenols, and those are typically we think of colors in fruits and vegetables, and bean
Right,
is,
right.
a coffee bean is a fruit, actually, a seed from a fruit, and so it does have some benefits. I love coffee. I drink coffee 3 times a day. I drink 3 cups of mugs a day. So yes, it's very important, but I really want to be careful. But now you can, so another source of mold I need to mention, tea. Black tea. English tea, black tea that so much of us here in the United States drink, terrible about mold. They take that tea leaf and they just dry it, air dry it. It's taking in everything that's in the air. And I do that mold test on it. It doesn't take a day or 2 for it to start growing mold. So black tea I don't like at all.
You left one near and dear to my heart off the list,
what's that?
which is organic wine.
Oh, organic wine.
Yeah, it's been shown that they're starting to test because it makes sense. You can have a bad grape in the bunch that is just molding naturally, but
Yes.
because they don't treat the crops with an antifungal,
Right.
that organic wines have the highest tendency in the wines of
Okay.
potentially having mold issues.
Okay. So yes, so matter of fact, it's a major issue because actually mold loves sugar. Grapes have a lot of sugar. Okay, and so matter of fact, making alcoholic beverages, involves yeast. Okay, and so there can be toxins from that, and actually alcohol would be one of those toxins.
So a lot of our followers are making their own yogurt now, and they don't like the taste of the yogurt when it comes, when it's freshly done. It's, that's not what they're accustomed to. They're trying to ease into it. So they'll take that batch of yogurt and they'll put fruit, they'll put things in the yogurt, nuts, fruits, okay? And so even though it's in the fridge, it still has the ability to ferment that whatever may have been left on that fruit. Or nuts. So the way to do it is right before you consume the yogurt, put those things in there, not leaving it in the fridge for a period of time.
That's the same reason you're using ultra pasteurized.
Right.
You're using dairy, ultra pasteurized,
Right.
half and
Right.
half, because you want to make sure that you're only
Right.
culturing the target bacteria.
Right. But everybody's thinking, well, it goes into the fridge. Well, it'll still ferment in the fridge if it's got bacteria on it. And you're putting it in and you're putting it in the fridge. It's already in the process of fermenting.
Something else to
So it's
think
just gonna
about is
continue.
The refrigerator is nothing but an air recycler. That's
Right.
cooling, and you have fruit and vegetables that will. You'll notice the mold spot on them, and it's time to throw it out. But it's recirculating that, so if it takes hold somewhere, it's
Get
something
the
to pay
moldy
attention to.
stuff out of the fridge.
Science project.
Don't leave it in. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And for those of you that have a refrigerator at work, the worst. I mean, because everybody leaves stuff in there for weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to go through and police it every week.
Yeah, so, matter of fact, at Flourish Pharmacy here in Oklahoma City, there's actually one person, and so that's her job. She loves doing that, cleaning that fridge, tossing stuff out, and going through that and tossing things out.
That's a good catch. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, as a matter of fact, actually, so even nuts and seeds, so storing things in the refrigerator will slow the growth of mold. Okay? So yes, so storing your nuts and seeds in the refrigerator is going to be better. And like this time of year, Oklahoma, we're at 90 to 100 degrees. Outside in the garage, the worst place to store your nuts and seeds or grains, or for those of us that are preppers, we have to be careful about what we're storing and what temperature it's at. So we have to be careful about that. So refrigeration is very important. It helps out. So but anyway, a low mold diet, fresh fruits and vegetables help out. What about glycemic control? Be careful about blood sugar. Blood sugar will feed mold and fungus in our body. And even those higher sugar grains, fruits and vegetables grow the mold. The molds make the mycotoxins that go out into the environment and into our body. So flavonoid-rich foods are really good. So Josh, do you have any anything you want to share about this? You know, any like supplements that help out, or?
We're working on some stuff. It was funny because we've been doing some things specifically around this, but just on mycotoxin binding and removal, you know, it kind of goes with the whole diet things we've been talking about anyway. So obviously sugar, no bueno, but charcoal, activated charcoal, bentonite, zeolite, clays will bind the mycotoxins. If you increase your fiber content to what it should be daily, that'll help you purge them after they're bound. And so we're looking along those lines, especially as we look at the fungal nature of cancers and other diseases, and being able to break those down, looking at things that'll help support purge and cleansing of the body.
Right. So, you know, matter of fact, those items for detoxing and items to do include, actually those supplements that you talked about, you know, I have them listed on my website too, on a blog talking about detox. And then exercise to the point where you sweat. You know, we get rid of toxins in the fluids, including perspiration and urine, bowel movement, the zeolite and binders and charcoal bind that up in the intestines so you won't reabsorb them. You know, and then infrared saunas, and then hyperbarics also help to improve circulation and improve lymphatic system, you know, so that our body can function better and help move that stuff out.
And stay hydrated. We always, I mean, we talk about it, but people don't think about it. You know, it's like in this protocol, it's saying, 2 to 3 liters a day. Use trace minerals in it or electrolytes. It helps cleanse the body and obviously helps metabolic function in general.
Right.
So we're coming up. I'm going to try to close with 3 really quick stories that's happened since we've been doing this. Shai told her story, and it's just kind of crept along through all of our clients. 3 big ones that happened right off the bat. I've got a gal that has been diving with me for some time. She's a good friend, and she's dealt with emergency kidney surgery 3 times in the last 3 years. And because she dove with Shai and what they talked about, she went home and did some investigation and found black mold, a heavy population of black mold in the bathroom that she never even would have thought to look for. I mean, it was inside the walls, and it was a pipe that was just barely leaking.
Right.
That's just going to keep it wet. And then we had another person that Shai actually took the Petri dishes down to one of my clients' houses that's been fighting cancer for really hard for 4 years, and just had a crazy 2 Petri dishes. And it's real, think about it, he went home for COVID and started working out of the house 4 years ago. His cancer returned with a vengeance, and this was never looked at until Shai took those Petri dishes down there.
Yeah.
And
Interrupt on that. So the cancer connection is not always direct, like the
Right.
estrogen receptor, because these mycotoxins create inflammation.
right.
Inflammation is a driver of cancer.
Right. So then the other one was an ice maker. So one of our clients had an ice maker, and he's hearing this story in the chamber, and he goes home and he's dealing with autoimmune issues, not necessarily cancer, but just he's kind of concerned is it from getting the shot, or is it, what is it? I don't know, what is it? So he goes home and sure enough takes his ice maker apart. After he had run the cleanser through it that you're supposed to do every 2 months, and there was a humongous mold load behind the curtain that you can't see. And, is that part of what is going on? So he's now sitting at the table with us, trying to dig down through the next layer. So it's just amazing. I continue to reach out to Shai and tell her thank you. We're going to post the things that she's dealing with now on Facebook. She's got a couple of groups on Facebook, and she's really connected nationally on a lot of different levels. And she even had an ice repairman working in a hospital that saw a problem with a commercial ice maker, and he started maintaining that particular ice maker. And now his entire business is schools, hospitals, and he's maintaining these commercial ice makers, and that's all he does. and he's become an expert at it.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a neat deal, and thank you for all that you've done to kind of bring us. We're not going to do questions this week. We're going to. I encourage
Submit questions.
everybody to put the questions up there.
We do have questions. We don't have time for that.
But we're going to
I
come
will.
back next week and continue this because there's some things we still haven't got into, and I would love to. I would love to respond to everyone's questions. I'm telling you, Shai has stirred it up, and so I know there's a lot of questions out there and a lot of things that you might be able to share with us that you did because of what we're doing here.
One last thing we didn't mention about the mycotoxins is that they do cause leaky gut, which is an issue for cancer patients. It's an issue for everybody in general, but and it's one of those things you may not have symptoms until you have symptoms, and they can be serious.
So, Shai, you made all of us dig deep. Keith with PrevailOverCancer.com really dug into it, and it's far-reaching. There's a lot of different trails this thing goes down. So if you're dealing with any of these things and you want to get into a community that helps support your issues, that be us. So Hyperbaric Plus, and our website is hyperbaric.plus, not .com, but hyperbaric.plus, and you'll find these videos posted there, and push the questions to us, because next week I think we're just going to do Q&A next week.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Yeah, that's great.
So we'll see how good Keith is.
We've got
Yeah.
these too. So
Yeah.
We've got some already, and
Yeah.
keep asking more questions.
Well, that sounds great. Appreciate you all being here. We'll see you next week, 11 o'clock, and we'll go from there. Thank you,
Great,
Keith.
great, thanks.